Thank you for the intro. I've become quite passionate about visualizing information. It feels like we're all suffering from information overload at the moment, both in the world and in our lives, in schools. Everyone is in a blizzard of data and information every day. I think one of the solutions to that might be to use our eyes more. So visualizing information so that we can see patterns and connections that matter. And then I would take it a stage further and then design that visual information so that it makes more sense, or that allows us to focus just on stuff that really matters. Also, it tells a story. And with modern tools and modern access to data and graphic design, you can really do that. And when you start doing that, kind of strange and unexpected and even quite magical things start to happen. So I want to show you some of the stuff I've done in this area. This is an image called the billion-dollar-ogram. You may have seen it online. This arose out of frustration I personally had with the reporting of billion-dollar amounts in the media, in that they're reported as self-evident facts, when in fact they're just completely mind-boggling amounts of money. And here I've scraped some reported figures from around the world, and I've sized the boxes according to these figures. And the colors here represent the motivation behind the money. So pink is like giving money away, green is like earning money, and so on. And what happens immediately when you start to visualize this information is that you start to have a different kind of relationship. You start to see connections and patterns. I mean, you can literally see these numbers. They're no longer as abstract. And more, you can start to see the connections and relationships between numbers that would perhaps otherwise be scattered across multiple news reports. I quite like the one in the corner there is donated by charity. The Americans are incredibly generous people. They give over $300 billion a year to charity. And then contrast that with the foreign aid payments of the top 17 industrial nations every year. That's just 120 billion. And in fact, I've been playing around with this data just recently, and I've just created a little film, a little animation, which kind of juxtaposes some of those contrasts. See what you think of this. I think the audio now, please. So different bits of numbers visualized, interlinked, become a story that you can start telling, and a different way of looking at these numbers. I did a similar thing with the UK budget. This is slightly less interesting because it's more localized, but I wanted to point out that massive hole that we're all facing the austerity measures for, that the UK budget deficit there, 175 billion, which is bigger than we earn in income tax every year, 152 billion. But still, this is kind of still quite abstract. We're still billions. We're still sort of not quite connecting with these numbers. So I took these numbers and I transcoded them, if you like, into amounts that we can probably relate to better. So here, I've taken the same budget and I've converted them into how much is spent per day by the average taxpayer, what their contribution is. And the thinking here is like, you probably don't know what you spend every month. You have a vague sense of what you spend every year, but you definitely know how much you spend every day. So here are the numbers. You're spending £9 a day for an average taxpayer. Average salary in the UK is about 24,500. You're spending £9 a day on the NHS, which you may feel is good value. 3p a day on museums and arts, which is pretty good. And £2.93 on Scotland, which, yes, a great institution. So again, trying to create a bridge between just me, really, or just a normal person, and these vast and often quite boring numbers, which is so important, actually, because all this has been spent in our name. So we need to understand the balances and the proportions. So de-abstractifying numbers, visualizing them, that's one thing I like to do. I like to kind of explore and use data as a landscape. I wonder if you can guess what this data set is. You may have seen this online. It was released online recently, so if you do know, don't say. But in this data set, it rises twice a year, peaks twice a year, once around about Easter and then 2 weeks before Christmas, and then has miniature peaks every Monday. Chocolate? You might want to get some chocolate in. Any other guesses? Flowers? Somebody might give you flowers. Sick leave, yes, you'll definitely want to take some time off. Let me show you. So we scraped 10,000 Facebook status updates for the phrase, "We broke up because." And this was the pattern that was revealed. So a big clean out before Easter, a mysterious spike around April Fool's Day, not quite sure why. Peaks every Monday, because people are coming out bad weekends, I guess. And then the lowest day of the year, of course, is Christmas Day, because no one would do that. So in this situation, it's like, we're generating huge amounts of data. This room is generating huge amounts of data right now. I can see many people tweeting. This is a vast kind of ocean, if you like, of data and information that if you ask the right kind of question or you look at it in the right kind of way, it can kind of reveal patterns to you that you might not otherwise see. And it can kind of, again, you can start to relate a bit more to this stuff, feel less distracted or abstracted from it. Some more patterns here. Let me see if you can imagine what a timeline of the world's biggest fears might look like. Let's have a look. More peaks and troughs. I'm going to label this for you so you can understand. So these are the world's biggest fears as reported in the media. So the height of these shapes here indicate the amount of times each fear has been mentioned. So from pinky over there, that's swine flu. Yellow is bird flu. Orange along is SARS. Do you remember that one? The grey spike on the left there is the millennium bug, which was very threatening, obviously. The little green row, that's asteroid collisions. And then the blue little humps at the front, they're killer wasps. So these are our fears, as reported. And I was kind of curious, I was thinking, is there like a pattern in the reporting? It always feels like there's a disease coming every couple of years or something. Is there something in that? And actually, when I did this, I was just curious and I was playing around, but there was a really odd pattern that emerged that I didn't expect. Let me highlight it for you. This is the pattern for violent video games. As you can see, there's a kind of regular shape. There's like twin peaks every year. And actually, if you look closer at the peaks, they occur at the same time every year. So our fear about violent video games resurges twice a year with weird regularity. And it's like, well, why is that? Why would that happen? November is quite a big month for video games, pre-Christmas, big releases, so there's sometimes an upsurge in concern about the content. But April isn't a particularly massive month for video games. But there is some association between April and violent video games. Does anybody know? No? Sorry? Tax time? No, not quite. No. It is an anniversary. April 1999 was the Columbine shooting. And that was a tragedy that was linked very closely to violent video games. And there have been court cases from the parents, there have been retrospectives, and even copycat shooters. And these two stories now, these fears of school shooting and violent video games, have become interlinked. And if you look at the correspondence between the two, this is a correlation. By the way, I use a tool called Google Insights for this, which tracks the intensity of keywords over time on the internet. And you can see these two ideas, or these two notions, are now completely correlate with each other. And these little spikes are the anniversaries, in fact, of Columbine. So that's your 5th, 8th, and 10th anniversary. So weird patterns just lurking in there in the group mind and also online, reflecting it. And there's an even stranger pattern that I spotted. If you look at this, you see there's a gap around about on the left-hand side of the diagram when all the sort of fears sort of die away momentarily. And you can see, well, again, why is that? And you can see where it starts. 9/11, exactly, when we had something very real to be scared about. So I think it's disappearing. So hidden patterns, and I'm a bit of a journalist, so I love finding stories and hidden stuff. And I like having my mind or my expectations, my ideas about things twisted or changed through data. So let me show you what I mean. This is a really simple question. Who has the biggest military budget in the world? USA. Yep, exactly right. So massive, 607 billion in 2008. So massive, in fact, that it can contain all those other top military budgets inside itself. And there's some of the other numbers for context there. So again, you might think, well, that chimes with your perception of America as a vast military machine out to kind of take over the world or muscle its opinion across the world. But is it true that America has the largest military budget in the world? Because you have to consider that America is a vastly wealthy country. In fact, it is so wealthy that it can contain the top 4 other largest economies inside itself. These are the combined earnings of the various states. So its military budget is bound to be enormous and disproportionately so. So to be fair, you really have to take military budget as a proportion of a GDP or a proportion of the country's earnings. You have to put it in relation to another figure. You just use an absolute figure. So when you do that, the landscape changes quite radically. So these other countries pop into view. These countries are spending massive amounts on the military, and the USA actually drops to about 7th. And then, this might spark other things in you. We're curious about why Georgia and Kyrgyzstan and Jordan are all spending that much on the military. You can do the same with armies. So who has the biggest army? China, exactly right. Massive, 2.1 million people. And again, that might chime with your perception of China as being a sort of latent military aggressive power waiting for the right provocation. But again, obviously it has a massive population. So when you adjust the figures, when you normalize those figures as a proportion of population, the picture changes absolutely radically. China actually drops to 124th. It actually has a tiny army for its size. And again, all these other countries pop into view. So in this situation, you can take data and you can use it as a lens to correct your vision. There's another great visualizer working called Hans Rosling, and his phrase is, let the data set change your mindset. And it has that potential if you work it in the right way. So information is beautiful. I wondered perhaps if I can make my life beautiful. This is my visual CV. This is not exactly that good, actually, as I see it on these enormous screens. Colors are a bit crap. But I just want to give you a little snapshot of my background. I started as a programmer. I worked as a journalist from a kid, actually, writing about technology and video games, and then about internet culture for newspapers. I got into online. I was in the advertising profession as well, freelance. But only recently have I been designing. I've never trained as a designer. I've never been to art college. I actually dropped out of college, sorry, when I was 19. And I kind of, Steve's YouTube people, I've taught myself through technology. This technology has kind of taught me. And it was curious, because when I started designing, I discovered something I didn't realize about myself. I already kind of knew how to design. I've been exposed to all this media over the years, and it kind of instilled some of the rules in me, the rules of space and typography and color. I'd sort of imbibed them. And I wasn't immediately brilliant at design, but I just had a sort of sense, I just had a feeling for it. And I don't think I'm unique in that sense. I think we're all in the same boat. We're all being exposed to the internet every day. The web is kind of training us to be designers or visualizers. It's training us to associate information with design. If you think about, even to the point maybe where the validity of the information is directly linked to how well it's designed. You think about seeing a shoddy website, how much you might dismiss the information on that website, and how much you might trust the website the information on a glossy and very well-designed website. So the two are interlinked, they're merging, information and design. And it seems a natural thing because our eyes are actually exquisitely sensitive to variations in color and pattern and space. You show you an image and you're looking for the patterns instinctively before you're perhaps even thinking. And this is the kind of language of the eye, color, space, and lines and associations. And if you combine that with the language of the mind, which is about words and concepts and text, you start to be able to speak two languages simultaneously, each enhancing the other. Let me just show you exactly what I mean. So this is a little diagram I did about the mess that is the telecoms industry at the moment. Everyone's suing everyone else because nobody wants anyone to succeed. It's just a crazy thing. But quite a complicated image. I'm going to simplify in a second. But I'm going to say there's two things going on here. There's a conceptual layer and then there's a visual layer. So on this conceptual layer, in these little bubbles, there are stories about why people are suing each other. So get rid of those. And then On this level, we're dropping into a more visual realm now. So the sizes, by the way, of these boxes are the revenues of the companies. And red revenues are dropping, and black revenues are increasing. So you can start using your eyes, without any of the words, to start seeing, your eyes can answer the question, is there an association between decreasing revenue and increasing litigiousness? Is there a relationship between size of company and increasing litigiousness? So it's working on two levels simultaneously. So you've got layers of information working. And that's quite an exciting potential, because when you start to combine it, sort of mysterious and quite cool things start happening. I just want to show you a few little things. Mashing up data, overlaying it, taking a wide view and then kind of layering it on top. So these are areas of high BNP membership around the country. And I was curious, I thought, what if you combined it with areas of large non-white population? Could there be correlations? Could there be patterns there that you couldn't see before? And lo and behold, you overlay just using a simple color technique, and you can start to see, well, there's some things you might expect maybe in West Yorkshire there, but some other places, Eastbourne, Swindon, these aren't correspondences you might necessarily see in a spreadsheet. So you can take a wide view, take a top down, or you can zoom in. So take a little stat like this. You've maybe seen this one. This is from Clay Shirky, a stat that he worked out for his cognitive surplus book. 200 billion hours spent per year watching TV by US adults. Maybe it is 2 billion years. Compared with 100 million hours to create Wikipedia. Just a simple visual contrast to just amplify that point. And in fact, it's weird, because when I did this diagram, when I did a little sketch, 100 million hours in my mind was way bigger than that. So our minds are quite difficult, find it quite difficult to proportion numbers mentally. Or you can take data and you can paint it into a landscape. These are the top search terms every year for 2009 across Europe. Quite boring data, really. Google release it every year. They call it Google Zeitgeist. But here it's turned into a landscape that you can explore with your eyes and spot your own patterns and see what you want to see. And you see quite a lot of conceptual variation here compared with, say, the United Search Terms of America, which is essentially just games and lyrics and Facebook. So paint with data, or take it and condense it into a tiny space. I'm a bit of a health nut, and I love this whole idea of supplementing your diet to become like a sort of amazingly healthy person. But I was frustrated with the reporting, because again, it's like conflicted. Vitamin C is good for you, wheatgrass is great for you. No, it isn't. Every day it seems there's a different report. So I took all the data for all the supplements that are on for sale, and I visualized it. So this visualization is called a balloon race. So the higher up the diagram, the more evidence there is for each supplement. And the size of the bubbles corresponds to the popularity, their popularity online. So you can see there's a relationship between popularity and efficacy straight away. And you can zoom in and start to see which substances are worth visualizing, substances are worth taking, and which perhaps are not worth taking. These are the lower end, less evidence. And I love this image because it's kind of useful, but it frustrates me because it took me ages to make it. It was like a month of research, and then I hand drew all the different versions of it. And I had 6 months to fill my book of 250 infographics, and after a month, I'd only filled 2 pages with this stupid diagram. But it points to something about visualizing information, that you can condense a huge amount of information into a really tiny space. And it's like a compression form for knowledge, the MP3 of knowledge almost. So there it is again. So I'm just going to wrap up now with something that excites me about the potential, and perhaps maybe in education as well, which a world I don't have that much experience with, but it feels like there could be a good connection between this kind of work and education. This is a visualization of the left and right political spectrum, what I did with a UK designer called Stephanie Pasavek. And I was frustrated and confused by exactly what defined the left and what exactly defined the right, and especially in these days when the two are blurring quite a lot. And it shows here how the ideas percolate from government down into society and culture, into the family, into individuals. And this is a concept map, so it's visualizing not data or statistics, but ideas, the actual way in which we might frame our world. And what excited me about this, just doing the image, I'm going to zoom in so you can see a little bit of detail, is that as doing it, I'm sort of a journalist and a kind of left-leaning guy. I desperately wanted the left-hand side of this diagram to be better than the right-hand side. And I could feel that tugging on me as I was creating this image. But I couldn't do that because I'd have a broken image or a lopsided diagram. So I had to honor the right-hand side in researching it and projecting it, and at the same time uncomfortably recognize how much of that right-hand side was actually in me that I wasn't perhaps seeing. And that points to maybe something quite exciting about visualizing information is that you can literally begin to see information like this anyway, see where other people are coming from, see what they're talking about. And it's not quite so threatening as being spoken to because it's just an image, right? You're just looking at it and it's just kind of opening your mind. It's just like a thing you're looking at. So there's a potential here to be able to hold contradictory or opposing views simultaneously because all have a little bit of truth to them, right? So, so I must end now. But I just wanted to say, design in itself seems to be about solving problems. And information design is about solving information problems. And it feels like in our world today that we have a lot of information problems, from runaway skepticism to just trust and breakdown and confusion and overload. So information design, data visualization has an opportunity to maybe provide elegant solutions or just even little zoom-ins or little windows into truth or some new perspective. I just want to leave you with this image. I don't know if you remember the Icelandic volcano. Was it a blessing for the world or a sort of disaster for the aviation industry? We look at the data, we see the volcano emitted 150,000 tons a day. The European aviation industry emits around about 350,000 tons. 60% of the flights were saved, so we saved 206,000 tons. And we had our first carbon-neutral volcano. Which is brilliant. And that is beautiful. So thank you.